Good evening, wherever this finds you. Maybe you're lying in bed, phone resting on the pillow, the weight of the day softening into stillness. Maybe you're sitting by a window in a quiet room, city lights or countryside silence just beyond the glass. I wonder, what time is it where you are right now? Midnight, dawn, or somewhere in between? Small hidden hour that feels like it belongs only to you. Wherever you are, you're not alone. Tonight, you're part of a quiet circle of curious dreamers, people scattered across time zones and continents, all tuning in to wonder together. If this kind of gentle journey into mystery feels like home to you, you're welcome to subscribe, not out of obligation, but as a way of keeping this fragile little signal alive. So now, with the world slowing, let's step into the question: what if reality itself isn't what it seems? Not just the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave, not just illusions of perception, but the entire fabric of existence. Every touch, every star, every breath, nothing more than code inside a vast simulation. Reality, at first glance, feels simple. It is the weight of a blanket against your skin, the sound of your own breathing, the faint hum of the world outside your window. It is the faces you remember, the streets you walk, the patterns of seasons returning each year. For most of us, reality is the seamless flow of sensation and memory, stitched together so tightly that we rarely pause to question the thread. To be real is to be here, awake, alive, embedded in a world that feels solid. Yet beneath that surface, doubts whisper, what if the thread is thinner than it seems? For now, there is no need to rush toward answers. Just let the question rest beside you like a quiet companion. As your eyes grow heavy, as your thoughts drift, we'll take a calm journey together through the strange possibility that everything familiar is only a layer, a screen, a program running silently behind the scenes. It's an idea that sits between science fiction and philosophy, between playful speculation and serious scientific debate. A thought experiment that unsettles the ground beneath our feet. Because if reality is a test, who wrote it? Why are we here? And how would we ever know? Perception, after all, is the first layer of reality we ever encounter. Our eyes don't passively capture the world like cameras. They receive scattered light and reconstruct it. Our ears don't record sound like microphones. They translate vibrating air into neural codes. And the brain does not simply store these signals. It edits, predicts, fills gaps, and sometimes invents details out of nothing. In other words, what we call the real world is already a simulation of sorts, running inside our heads. Science itself once trusted this solidity. For centuries, the universe was assumed to be a grand clockwork, its gears ticking with flawless precision. Reality, in this view, was the firmest ground imaginable. Objects with definite shapes, events unfolding in neat order. But modern science has unsettled that picture. Relativity tells us that time bends and slows depending on where you stand. Quantum physics insists that particles exist in blurry superpositions until they are observed. Suddenly, the firm floor beneath us ripples, and reality looks less like a machine and more like a dream balanced on perception. Take optical illusions. A flat picture of a cube can trick us into seeing depth. Two identical colors can appear different depending on context. A still image can seem to shimmer with motion, though no pixel moves. These aren't glitches in the eyes, but predictions by the brain, shortcuts that usually help us survive, but occasionally betray their own trickery. Even when awake, reality is shaped not only by what enters the senses, but by what the mind expects to find. Hallucinations remind us of just how thin the veil can be. To someone in the grip of high fever or certain neurological conditions, voices may speak where none exist. Figures may stand in empty rooms. For them, these visions are as vivid as any shared world, and in those moments, what separates real from unreal. If a mind believes with conviction, can we dismiss that reality as false? Or must we admit that reality is always partly personal, always filtered by fragile cognition? Memory adds another layer of fragility. We like to believe our memories are faithful records, but neuroscience shows they are more like evolving stories. Each time we recall an event, we reconstruct it, sometimes altering small details, sometimes reshaping entire episodes without realizing it. Eyewitness accounts, long trusted as pillars of truth, are riddled with errors born from this plasticity. If memory can bend so easily, then part of what we consider real is already woven from shifting recollection, half-truth, and imaginative fill-in. Déjà vu deepens the mystery. In that eerie sensation of living a moment twice, time itself feels distorted. Neurologists explain it as a hiccup in memory systems, signals crossing in the temporal lobe, confusing the new with the familiar. Yet the subjective feeling resists dismissal. When déjà vu occurs, the world seems scripted, pre-recorded, as though we have stumbled across a clue that life itself is repeating. Whether biological glitch or hidden signal, it unsettles our certainty that the present moment is fresh and unscripted. Knowledge nuggets from cognitive science suggest the brain is not a passive receiver, but an active predictor. It is constantly generating simulations of the world, comparing incoming data to its models, and updating them. This process, called predictive processing, allows us to move smoothly through life. When you catch a ball, you are not reacting in real time, but predicting its path. When you walk through a crowded street, your brain simulates how others will move and plots your course ahead. In this sense, the brain is already a simulation machine, running endless models of possible futures and quietly erasing the ones that do not come true. And so, the question grows sharper. If our senses can be tricked, if memory is malleable, if consensus itself can shift, then what do we really mean when we say something is real? If we already live inside a personal simulation built by neurons, how firm is the ground we share with others? Two people looking at the same sunset may not see the same hues, may not feel the same passage of time, may not even remember the event in the same way days later. Reality, then, is partly collective agreement. We decide what is real by consensus, by trusting that enough of our perceptions overlap. Yet consensus is fragile. History is full of moments when entire cultures disagreed on what was real. Disease caused by spirits, the earth at the center of the cosmos, the shape of continents. Each felt obvious until it didn't. The same applies to time itself. Experiments show that our sense of duration is elastic. A frightening moment can stretch into what feels like eternity, while hours of absorbing activity can vanish in a blink. The brain stitches together these uneven moments into a smooth fabric, convincing us that time flows steadily, when in truth, our internal clocks drift and sway. What we call the present is stitched from countless predictions, corrections, and guesses. To test the limits of this consensus reality, psychologists have long explored how perception can be bent. Consider the famous invisible gorilla experiment, where observers counting basketball passes often fail to see a person in a gorilla suit walk across the screen. The lesson is stark. Attention edits the world so aggressively that we miss what is right before our eyes. Reality, then, is not only fragile, it is selective, a filtered story we tell ourselves moment by moment. Dreams blur the line further. Each night we enter worlds of sensation and narrative that feel real until we wake. Within the dream, gravity holds, faces appear, entire landscapes unfold, yet none of it exists outside our mind stage. Some scientists even argue that waking life is built on the same principles as dreams. Internal models, shaped by expectation, tested against incoming signals. The difference is not the mechanism, but the degree of stability. Neuroscience reinforces the same uneasy truth. Brains do not process reality in real time. They anticipate. When you hear a familiar song, your brain predicts the next note milliseconds before it arrives. When someone speaks, you anticipate words before they are spoken. This constant forecasting creates a world that feels continuous and coherent, but only because errors are quickly patched over. We are living inside models, and the raw data often trails behind. This fragility opens the door to deeper speculation. if our senses deceive, if our minds simulate, if consensus is malleable, could reality itself be a larger simulation, layered above these smaller ones? Perhaps our illusions and glitches are not flaws, but hints, small cracks in the program, reminding us that solidity is borrowed, not fundamental. Physics, too, whispers uncertainty. The double-slit experiment, where particles behave like waves until observed, suggests that reality waits for attention before deciding what it will be. Some interpret this as proof that the observer shapes the world, though physicists caution it may only reveal the strangeness of quantum rules. Still, the metaphor lingers. We may be co-authors of reality, not just readers. If reality can be doubted at every level, from perception to memory, from time to consensus, then the central question emerges: how do we ever know that what remains is truly there? Philosophers from Descartes to Kant have wrestled with this riddle. Descartes famously wondered if a malicious demon deceived him into believing in a world that did not exist. Today, we trade demons for simulations, but the unease is the same. Our confidence rests not on certainty, but on trust. Trust in senses, trust in shared agreements, trust that the ground beneath our feet is not a stage built for us alone. This trust, though comforting, may be misplaced. The brain as simulator model shows that the very faculty we rely on to separate truth from fiction is itself a fabricator. We cannot step outside the mind to verify its images against a higher reality. If the universe were a simulation, indistinguishable from the one we already construct internally, how would we ever tell the difference? The answer may be that we cannot. Or perhaps that the difference is irrelevant, whether base reality or simulated code. What matters is the consistency of the experience, the patterns we can trace, the meanings we build. Yet in the quiet of night, when illusions and déjà vu press at the edges of certainty, the suspicion returns. Perhaps reality itself is provisional, a story told convincingly but not completely, an agreement fragile enough to unravel with a single glitch. There are questions that linger in the human imagination, drifting between philosophy and science, between bedtime speculation and academic rigor. One of the most haunting is this: what if reality itself is only a simulation, not metaphor, not dream, but an actual computational construct crafted by beings far beyond us? It may sound like science fiction, but it has been formalized into a precise philosophical argument by Oxford professor Nick Bostrom. In 2003, Bostrom published what is now known as the simulation argument, a thought experiment that shook both scholars and popular culture. He presented it not as a claim, but as a trilemma, a logical fork with three unsettling paths. His reasoning was simple, yet profound. If civilizations can survive long enough to develop immense computing power, they will almost certainly run simulations of their ancestors. And if that is the case, then statistically, we are far more likely to be inside such a simulation than to be in the original base reality. As we move forward, we'll explore how thinkers and scientists have taken this suspicion and formalized it into the simulation hypothesis, a framework that dares to suggest that our doubts are not just philosophy but clues. Let's slow down and examine this trilemma carefully. The first possibility: advanced civilizations never reach the technological capacity to create such simulations. Perhaps they destroy themselves before achieving such feats. Nuclear war, climate collapse, or some other catastrophe wipes them out. In this scenario, the reason we are not living inside a simulation is because no one survives long enough to build one. The second possibility is civilizations reach that level of power, but choose not to simulate their ancestors. Maybe they consider it unethical to create conscious beings only to observe their struggles. Maybe they lose interest. Maybe their energy is better spent on other pursuits. In that case, we are not in a simulation because our descendants, or others like them, simply never pressed run. The third possibility is the most astonishing. Civilizations do build simulations, and they build so many that simulated beings vastly outnumber real ones. In that case, the odds that we are in base reality shrink to almost nothing. Statistically, we are nearly certain to be simulated, digital echoes mistaking ourselves for flesh. Bostrom himself does not insist on which fork is true. His point is that one of them must be. Either civilizations go extinct early, or they restrain themselves. We are almost certainly inside a simulation. Each option is sobering. One predicts doom, another suggests restraint, the third undermines our deepest assumptions about existence. To many, this sounds abstract, but analogies make it clear. Consider video games. 40 years ago, graphics were crude blocks of color. Today, vast open worlds on screens, populated by characters who act, talk, and seem alive. With the rise of virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and increasingly powerful processors, the line between simulation and reality grows thinner. If humans already craft such worlds in mere decades, imagine what a civilization with 1 million more years of advancement could do. These hypothetical future worlds are sometimes called ancestor simulations. Imagine our descendants, curious about their own history, recreating the 21st century in intricate detail, down to each individual person. They might run it not once, but countless times, tweaking variables, exploring alternate paths. From inside, the inhabitants would have no way of knowing they were simulating. Their lives would feel real because in every meaningful sense they would be real. Real thoughts, real pain, real love, all running on another substrate. Skeptics object that consciousness cannot emerge from computation, that no matter how complex the program, it could never produce genuine awareness. Yet even now, the line blurs. Artificial intelligence generates text, images, and voices that feel startlingly human. Neural networks mimic learning and adaptation. If the brain itself is a biological computer built of neurons and synapses, why should computation not scale? The debate remains open, but the plausibility grows stronger with each technological leap. Another analogy: think of physics engines used in modern simulations. They calculate gravity, collision, light, and sound with breathtaking accuracy. To the player, the world feels coherent and obeys consistent law. Our universe, too, obeys laws constants like the speed of light, Planck's constant, and gravity. Could these be the settings of a grand simulation, parameters set by programmers outside our comprehension? Of course, skepticism is healthy. Some philosophers argue that Bostrom's trilemma is unprovable, that it merely repackages old doubts about reality into modern language. They say it is no more testable than Plato's cave or Descartes' demon. Perhaps, but what makes the simulation hypothesis so powerful is not that it is provable, but that it is logically airtight. If advanced simulations are possible and common, then the odds tilt heavily against us being real in the traditional sense. What deepens the intrigue is the growing computational plausibility. In 2003, Bostrom's argument was largely theoretical, but in the decades since, computing power has exploded. The ability to simulate weather patterns, human genomes, even galaxies has advanced dramatically. If Moore's law or its successors continue, a time may come when entire civilizations can be simulated with high fidelity. And if they can, why wouldn't they? This line of thought has captivated not just academics, but technologists. Elon Musk famously stated he believes the odds that we are in base reality are 1 in billions. Others in Silicon Valley have speculated about breaking out of the simulation as if it were a game with hidden exits. Most scientists remain cautious, yet the fact that serious thinkers even entertain the possibility marks a shift. At this stage, the question becomes less about technology and more about philosophy. Should simulations of conscious beings be considered real? Do they deserve rights, recognition, protection? If so, then our own lives, simulated, carry weight not as illusions, but as valid existences in their own right. The simulation hypothesis does not diminish us, it unsettles us. It suggests that the line between real and simulated may be thinner than we imagine, perhaps non-existent. After all, what matters more? The substrate of our being or the vividness of our experience? If pain hurts, if love warms, if memory shapes us, then our reality, whatever its base, is valid. In the next part, we'll travel deeper into the heart of this argument, exploring not only the analogies, but the scientific and philosophical pushback. Because while the simulation hypothesis is compelling, it is also controversial. Some see it as a profound clue about the universe. Others dismiss it as modern mythology dressed in digital clothing. Between these poles lies the real mystery, not whether we can prove it, but what it means to live under the shadow of such a possibility. To continue unraveling the simulation hypothesis, we must consider the criticisms, because every profound idea casts both light and shadow. Philosophers, physicists, and computer scientists have raised objections, not to dismiss the question, but to refine it. One argument insists that even if computing power grows exponentially, the sheer scale of simulating an entire universe would be prohibitive. Imagine tracking every atom in a galaxy. The computational demand would be beyond comprehension. Another critique points to consciousness. Skeptics claim no machine, however powerful, could replicate subjective experience. This is known as the hard problem of consciousness, explaining why a set of computations should produce the feeling of being alive. But the counter-argument is simple. If consciousness arises from the complex interactions of neurons, then there is no reason it cannot arise from digital substrates. What we call mind may be the emergent property of complexity itself, regardless of material. Yet this objection assumes that every detail must be rendered. Think again of video games. A forest in a game does not simulate each leaf until you look closely. Only what is needed in the moment is calculated. The rest is approximated or left blank. If a simulated universe used similar shortcuts, only rendering what is observed, the demands shrink drastically. Quantum uncertainty, with particles existing as probabilities until measured, begins to look suspiciously like such an optimization. There are also ethical questions. If simulations can generate beings with subjective experience, does that make us, if simulated, deserving of moral concern? Would our creators be responsible for our suffering, our wars, our heartbreaks? Some ethicists suggest that no advanced civilization would dare run ancestor simulations for this reason. Yet history shows us that curiosity often overrides caution. Humans already simulate life in countless ways: genetic models, virtual realities, artificial ecosystems. If we could simulate entire civilizations, would we really refrain forever? Here lies the paradox. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the more likely they are to achieve the capacity to run such simulations. The more simulations exist, the more likely it is that we inhabit one. And if we do not, then perhaps the darker alternatives are true. Civilizations never survive, or they universally refuse. Both carry unsettling implications. Either intelligent life is fragile and doomed, or it is strangely restrained in ways we are not. But what does it mean for us, practically, to consider ourselves simulated? Some embrace it as liberating. If we are code, then perhaps death is not final, but a reboot, a return to the system's archive. Others find it terrifying, reducing existence to entertainment for unknown watchers. And yet, others suggest it changes nothing. Whether base reality or simulate, our experiences feel real. Our emotions move us. Our choices ripple through our lives. Meaning, they argue, is not erased by simulation, but reframed. Cultural echoes of this hypothesis are everywhere. Films like The Matrix dramatize the idea of living in an illusion, awakening to deeper truths. Religious traditions echo the suspicion. Hinduism speaks of Maya, the grand illusion. Buddhism questions the solidity of the self. Christianity hints at a higher realm beyond the visible. The simulation hypothesis may be a new skin on an old question. Is the world we see the ultimate truth, or a veil hiding something greater? Interestingly, scientific exploration of the hypothesis is not purely speculative. Some physicists have proposed tests looking for lattice-like patterns in cosmic rays, which might reveal a grid underlying space-time, or searching for computational limits disguised as physical constants. These efforts may not succeed, but the fact they are attempted at all shows how seriously some take the possibility. Yet dreams matter. They shape how we see ourselves. If we live under the suspicion of simulation, it may shift how we treat the world, how we value experience. If reality is a test, then what is it testing? Morality, curiosity, resilience, or is the purpose beyond human grasp, a mystery etched into the very code of being? Still, one must remain cautious. The simulation hypothesis is unfalsifiable by design. Any evidence could itself be part of the simulation. A glitch we observe might be genuine, or it might be planted as scenery. Even the very urge to question could be scripted. This unfalsifiability makes it less a scientific theory and more a philosophical stance, akin to asking whether the world is a dream. Nick Bostrom himself emphasizes that the simulation argument is not about certainty, but probability. He does not claim we are simulated. He claims the odds lean heavily that way. If certain conditions are true, his purpose is to force us into uncomfortable reflection, to remind us that what feels obvious may not be certain. Whether we accept or reject the hypothesis, the act of questioning expands our understanding of existence. As the night deepens and our journey continues, the trilemma lingers. Perhaps civilizations destroy themselves, and we are one of the rare survivors in fragile base reality. Perhaps they thrive but refuse to play God, leaving us unobserved in the raw universe. Or perhaps, and here the whisper grows loudest, we are already in the code, living lives as real to us as any, unaware that beyond the screen lies another layer. In the sections ahead, we will look more closely at signs and glitches, at the subtle oddities of physics and consciousness that might hint at simulation. But for now, the question stands before us like an open door. If our world is a simulation, does it make it less real, or does it make it, in some strange way, even more precious? Some mysteries reach us not through distant galaxies or vast equations, but through the subtle cracks in our everyday experience. They whisper at the edges of the ordinary, as if the program of reality faltered for just a second. These whispers are what some call glitches in the matrix, not proof, not certainty, but moments when reality feels less like a continuous fabric and more like a digital film with skipped frames. Take déjà vu, that uncanny sensation of reliving a moment you know is happening for the first time. You walk into a room, hear a phrase, see the way light falls across the floor, and suddenly the scene feels rehearsed, already known. Neuroscientists describe it as a misfiring of memory, a confusion between the circuits that record the present and those that retrieve the past. But inside the experience, explanations dissolve. It feels like evidence of a loop, a repeated cycle, as though the system hiccuped and played the same file twice. Déjà vu often passes quickly, leaving behind a lingering unease. What if that shiver of repetition is more than biology? What if it is a trace of a hidden architecture? A moment when we glimpse the program's recycling of code. Most scientists remain cautious, but they also admit that the brain itself is a prediction machine, constantly running simulations and updating them. Perhaps déjà vu is not simply error, but a byproduct of our own internal emulator syncing with the greater system we inhabit. Closely related are the strange cultural phenomena known as the Mandela effect, named after the false memory many shared of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. It describes collective misrememberings that persist across populations. Some recall movie lines that were never spoken, brand logos that never existed, or histories that unfold differently than they should. Skeptics chalk it up to the malleability of memory and the spread of false information. Yet the eerie part is the consistency, thousands or millions remembering the same non-event. In a world where memory is already fragile, the Mandela effect suggests a deeper instability. Are these misrememberings simply echoes of cultural drift, or tiny reboots, patches in the program, small edits that ripple backward into our collective experience? To the rational mind, the answer is mundane. Memory is flawed, but to the speculative dreamer, the possibility lingers. Maybe the script is occasionally rewritten, and our minds catch only faint traces of the update. Even beyond déjà vu and false memories, life is filled with improbable coincidences that strain belief. Meeting a stranger with your same birthday, finding the same rare phrase in two unrelated books on the same day, or dreaming of a person only to have them call you the next morning. Statisticians explain that in a universe of billions, coincidences are inevitable, but subjectively, they feel like synchronicities, moments when hidden lines of code align too neatly to be chance. Carl Jung called them meaningful coincidences, suggesting they hint at patterns beneath reality's surface. If the world were a simulation, coincidences might be less random than they seem. They could be artifacts of a system reusing variables, recycling elements, or allowing narrative threads to cross. Just as a video game might repurpose textures in different places, perhaps reality reuses patterns, producing overlaps that feel uncanny. We cannot prove this, but the sensation of improbability pushes us to wonder. This analogy may feel fanciful, yet it resonates with computer science. Programmers often use lazy evaluation, calculating results only when required. Why would the universe operate in such a way unless it too economized? Again, most physicists would not leap to simulation, yet the comparison is suggestive, blending poetic speculation with real mechanics of how nature behaves. Beyond human perception, physics itself offers its own glitches, or what at least appear to be them. Consider quantum randomness. At the smallest scales, particles refuse to behave deterministically. They exist as probabilities until measured, then collapse into definite states. To some, this is simply the deep rule of the universe. To others, it looks like a rendering engine deciding on outcomes only when needed, conserving resources by leaving them undefined until observed. This analogy may feel fanciful, yet it resonates with computer science. Programmers often use lazy evaluation, calculating results only when required. Why would the universe operate in such a way unless it too economized? Again, most physicists would not leap to simulation, yet the comparison is suggestive, blending poetic speculation with real mechanics of how nature behaves. Another knowledge nugget lies in the Planck length, the smallest possible unit of distance in our physical theories, roughly 1.6 guys 10 or 35 meters. It marks a scale beneath which the concept of space itself ceases to have meaning. Space is not infinitely divisible. It comes in discrete packets. To some, this sounds like the pixels of a cosmic screen, the resolution limit of the simulation. Just as digital images cannot resolve detail below a single pixel, the universe may not render beyond the Planck scale. The speed of light, too, plays into this analogy. In our universe, nothing can travel faster than light in a vacuum, about 300,000 kilometers per second. This constant acts like a maximum data transfer rate, the bandwidth limit of reality. No matter how much energy you pour into a particle, you cannot push it beyond this ceiling. In a simulated universe, such a limit would make sense, preventing overload and maintaining coherence. It may be coincidence, or it may be design. Physicists have even proposed direct tests for simulation. One idea is to look for grid lines in the universe, tiny anisotropies in cosmic rays that might reveal an underlying lattice structure. If space-time is continuous, cosmic rays should scatter randomly, but if it is discrete, like pixels on a screen, then at extreme energies the grid may leave a detectable pattern. No clear evidence has been found yet, but the search continues, quietly blurring the line between science and science fiction. For the insomniac listening in the small hours, these thoughts may flutter between fascinating and unsettling. Are déjà vu and the Mandela effect simple quirks of the mind, or faint hints of a larger simulation? Are coincidences mere chance or recycled threads in a program? Are physics constants just the laws of nature, or the coded limits of an engine running silently in the background? The truth is uncertain. What remains is the feeling that reality sometimes wavers, offering fleeting glimpses of something beyond. In the next half of this journey, we'll deepen these explorations, looking closer at the cultural myths, the philosophical echoes, and the scientific challenges of interpreting glitches, because whether illusion or clue, they remind us of a truth too easily forgotten. Reality, far from being simple, may be the greatest mystery of all. The suspicion that reality may not be seamless has haunted humanity for centuries. But in recent years, cultural fascination with glitches has surged. Online communities gather stories of impossible alignments, clocks freezing at the same numbers in different cities, strangers vanishing in mid-conversation, or people waking to find the world shifted in small but undeniable ways. Most are anecdotes, easy to dismiss, yet the sheer volume of them reflects something deeper, a collective sense that reality occasionally falters, exposing seams in the cloth. One striking example is time slips, moments when individuals report finding themselves briefly in another era. A tourist in Liverpool claimed to step out of a shop and into the 1950s, complete with vintage cars and period clothing, only to blink and return to the modern street. Psychologists call these hallucinations or memory confabulations, but for those who live them, the experience is shattering. In a simulated universe, such slips could be artifacts of loading errors, fragments of earlier code bleeding through. The Mandela effect, déjà vu, improbable coincidences, and time slips converge into a pattern. They unsettle our trust in continuity. They remind us that perception is a negotiation between expectation and input, fragile at best. And if reality is indeed coded, these anomalies might be intentional, stress tests, Easter eggs, or checksums embedded by the system's architects. Science contributes its own unsettling puzzles. Cosmic rays, particles born in the hearts of exploding stars, bombard Earth at near light speeds. At extreme energies, they should scatter randomly. But some physicists have speculated that if reality were a lattice, like a digital grid, then rays might reveal preferred directions, betraying the grid's orientation. Experiments continue, combing through torrents of data, searching for a telltale signature. Nothing conclusive has emerged, but the hunt itself blurs boundaries. Serious scientists now probe questions once relegated to fiction. Then there is the Planck length, a concept that feels more like code than cosmos. At this unimaginably small scale, distance ceases to make sense. Space is not a smooth continuum, but grainy, like pixels under a magnifying glass. Similarly, time itself may be quantized, broken into indivisible ticks. To live within such a universe is to live inside discrete frames. Just as a video runs at fixed frames per second, we do not see the flicker, but it structures our every moment. The speed of light functions like a system-wide safeguard. No matter how we accelerate, we cannot surpass it. Like the maximum refresh rate of a display, it ensures stability. If nothing could outrun the system's own update cycle, coherence would be preserved. To us, it is a cosmic law. To a programmer, it would be a performance limit, essential to keeping the simulation consistent. Quantum randomness adds another layer. When particles collapse from probabilities into realities, they do so unpredictably. Some interpret this as fundamental indeterminacy. Others wonder if it is a random number generator at work, seeding outcomes when needed. In cryptography, random generators are crucial. In simulations, they prevent predictable patterns. Could our universe employ the same logic? Skeptics remind us that these parallels may be seductive, but misleading. Just because physics resembles programming does not mean it is programming. We are bound to compare the unknown to what we know. And today, what we know is computation. A century ago, metaphors leaned toward clockwork. Earlier still, toward divine craftsmanship. The simulation metaphor may be the latest lens, not the ultimate truth. Yet even with this caution, the resonance is hard to ignore. The Planck length as pixels, light speed as bandwidth, quantum collapse as lazy rendering, each carries poetic power. Each invites us to lean closer to the fabric of reality, as though pressing our noses to the screen in search of pixels. For the listener drifting into sleep, the effect is hypnotic. You may recall your own glitches, a dream so real it lingered for days, a coincidence so sharp it defied dismissal, a déjà vu that felt more like prophecy, rational or not. These experiences are part of being human. and they leave us with a lingering impression that our world, stable and ordinary as it seems, may hide deeper layers of structure. In the end, glitches do not prove the simulation hypothesis. They may be illusions, errors of memory, quirks of physics we do not yet grasp, but they serve another purpose. They keep us questioning, keep us awake to mystery. They remind us that certainty is fragile, that what we call reality may be provisional, contingent, conditional. If we are simulated, glitches are the closest we come to footprints of the architects. If we are not, they remain precious mysteries, windows into the strangeness of consciousness and the limits of perception. Either way, they enrich the tapestry, our experience, and make the world more enigmatic, more alive. As our journey continues, we will leave behind these small cracks and turn toward the vast architecture itself. The deeper question of time, memory, and how reality remembers or forgets, because glitches may be hints. But the true story lies in the silence between them, in the way the universe erases and rewrites, as though it too were an editor refining its own code. To understand how fragile reality is, we need only look backward into the abyss of deep time. Our planet is 4.5 billion years old. Yet when we trace the record of life, civilizations, of memory, what survives is a faint fraction. Most of Earth's past has been erased, overwritten by the restless churn of geology. Time here does not simply pass. It edits. Consider the land beneath your feet. A mountain may rise proud and immovable, but over millions of years it is worn down grain by grain, swept into rivers, deposited as sand, and eventually pressed into stone. That new stone may itself be folded, melted, transformed. The original mountain is gone, not hidden, but undone. Geology is the planet's reset button. It discards pages even as it writes new ones. For civilizations, this erasure is merciless. Wood rots, cloth decays, iron rusts, even stone, left long enough, crumbles. Archaeologists remind us that of all the humans who have ever lived, the vast majority left no trace that endured. If our species vanished today, within 10,000 years, cities would collapse into dust. In a million years, only stubborn traces, plastic molecules, radioactive isotopes, perhaps a few carved stones, might whisper that we were here. This forgetting mirrors the logic of digital simulations. When a program runs, it often overwrites old data to conserve space. A saved game replaces earlier states, preserving only what is necessary for the next moment. Entire histories are discarded, compressed, deleted. Earth seems to do the same. Whole continents are subducted into the mantle, their stories consumed by magma. Oceans rise and fall, erasing shorelines. Ice sheets scrape landscapes bare, rewriting them in silence. If the planet were code, it would be efficient code, always clearing memory. Think of the fossil record. Out of billions of species that have lived, only a fraction left fossils. And of those fossils, only a fraction have been found. Paleontologists liken it to a book where most pages are missing and the few remaining are water-stained and torn. If history is a text, it is written in disappearing ink. For us, the illusion of continuity rests on fragments. The deep past is filled with blank chapters. We know the dinosaurs, but what of the civilizations of microbes that preceded them, thriving in ancient seas for billions of years? We can reconstruct chemical traces, stromatolite mounds, isotopes in rock, but these are sketches, not portraits. The further we peer, the more we realize that memory is shallow compared to the ocean of forgotten time. This recognition unsettles. If Earth can erase almost everything, what of us? What of our records, our digital libraries, our monuments, of steel and glass? They feel permanent, but they are not. A hard drive lasts decades, perhaps centuries, if tended. Paper, in ideal conditions, survives millennia. Stone may endure longer, but even it bends under deep time. Memory, on this planet, is not secure. Now imagine history as compressed code. A simulation might store only the necessary variables, population numbers, climate averages, cultural trends. The vivid details of individual lives may be rendered only when observed, discarded when no longer needed. Our Earth behaves in much the same way. It does not keep everything. It stores just enough for continuity, enough for the next round. The rest is erased, as if deleted save files. This parallel forces us to ask, what earlier saves have been lost? What stories, what civilizations, what experiments of life once flourished, only to be overwritten by the system's relentless reset? We know of some mass extinctions, the Permian, the Cretaceous, but these are the rare cases where the trace is clear. How many others have come and gone, their evidence recycled into new stone, their memory erased beyond recall? For insomniacs, listening in the quiet night, this thought may be both terrifying and strangely soothing. Terrifying because it shows how fragile our existence truly is. Soothing because it suggests that impermanence is not failure, but the natural rhythm of the system. Just as simulations cycle, so too does Earth. We are part of a vast process of writing and erasing, remembering and forgetting. And yet, the idea that our history is compressed, selective, incomplete, that it may even be intentional, haunts us. If memory is shallow, then our certainty about reality is shallow too. Perhaps we are not the first. Perhaps earlier runs of civilization existed, deleted, when no longer needed. If Earth is a simulation, then its geology is its garbage collector, sweeping away obsolete data to make room for the next iteration. To appreciate how thoroughly the Earth overwrites itself, consider plate tectonics. The crust is not static, but drifts on molten currents. Old seafloor is pulled down into trenches, swallowed into the mantle, recycled into magma. The oldest oceanic crust, still on the surface, is barely 200 million years old, less than 5% of Earth's age. Every record before that has been erased, as though an enormous delete key swept across the oceans. If you were to search for traces of civilizations older than this threshold, you would find nothing but churned stone. On land, the erasure is subtler, but just as relentless. Winds sandblast cliffs, rivers carve valleys, glaciers grind entire regions down to bedrock. Volcanoes erupt, burying landscapes beneath lava that later hardens into new rock. Deserts shift and consume settlements. What endures in one epoch is obliterated in the next. It is as though the Earth continually refreshes its surface, just as a simulation clears unused data to optimize performance. Even the grandest human monuments would be no match for this cycle. Imagine our cities abandoned. In centuries, buildings collapse. In millennia, forests and deserts reclaim them. In a million years, the continents will have shifted, rivers redirected, climates altered. Fossils of our age may be sparse, perhaps a thin layer of plastics, concrete, and radionuclides compressed into the strata, a geological bookmark saying they were here. Beyond that, silence. This impermanence poses a tantalizing thought. If a prior civilization existed millions of years ago, would we know? Evidence would be pulverized, melted, recycled. A few anomalous isotopes, unexplained chemical residues, or unusual mineral structures might remain, but nothing like the clear records we demand as proof. Just as in a simulation, old saves would be deleted to make space for the next round. Geologists sometimes speak of the Earth as a palimpsest, a manuscript written over and over, each layer scraped clean before the next is inscribed. Occasionally, faint traces of the older text bleed through, offering tantalizing hints, but never the full story. Our fossil record is such a palimpsest. Our histories, whether biological or cultural, rest on the thinnest layer of pages. Beneath lie volumes erased. This deep amnesia reshapes how we view ourselves. We like to think of humanity as the pinnacle of Earth's story, yet we may be only the most recent annotation on a text that has been rewritten countless times. Perhaps civilizations rose and fell long before us, remembered now only as geological whispers, or perhaps Earth herself is a simulation that refreshes periodically, compressing old data, saving only what is needed for continuity. Even our own memories mirror this process. Neuroscience reveals that memory is not a library, but a reconstruction. Each recall overwrites, alters, compresses. We keep the gist, not the detail. Our minds, like the earth, are shallow archives. Efficient but incomplete personal memory and planetary memory share the same logic. Preserve just enough for survival, discard the rest. If this is true, then history is less a record and more a dream. We build meaning from fragments, not from the whole. We stand on ruins, most of which are invisible. The illusion of permanence is comforting, but false. Time is not a line, but a tide, always erasing, always rewriting. For those listening in the still hours of night, this may feel both humbling and freeing. Humbling, because it shows how small we are in the sweep of deep time, how easily our achievements vanish. Freeing, because it suggests that impermanence is natural, that erasure is part of the story, even if we are a simulation, even if Earth is only one version among many. Our present moment shines with its own kind of reality. And so we ask again, what earlier saves have been deleted? Were there other humanities, other civilizations, other stories written on this same stage before ours began? We cannot know for certain, but the absence of memory does not erase the possibility. Like faint ghosts, the questions remain, lingering at the edges of geology, whispering that reality may be less secure than it seems. As we move forward, we carry this tension with us, the knowledge that history is fragile, that memory is shallow, and that existence may be a series of overwrites. The next step in our journey will turn from Earth's erasures to the strange enigma of consciousness itself, and how the act of observation might not only record reality, but create it. Of all the mysteries that surround the simulation hypothesis, none is more haunting than consciousness. Matter and energy may behave predictably. Stars may burn and collapse. Atoms may dance their eternal dance. But somewhere in the midst of it, awareness awakens. We do not merely exist, we experience. We feel warmth, taste sweetness, dream in color, and ache with memory. This subjective glow, this first-person presence, is consciousness, and it raises a question as puzzling as any in philosophy. Why should the lights be on at all? Physics explains particles, biology explains cells, neuroscience explains neural circuits, yet none fully explains how raw sensation emerges. This gap is often called the hard problem of consciousness. Why does computation give rise to experience? Why should a network of firing neurons not simply process information silently, like a calculator, but also generate the feeling of being alive? In the context of a possible simulation, the question deepens. If reality is code, then consciousness is either a side effect of that code or something far more fundamental. Are we merely algorithms running inside a program? Our awareness an emergent illusion, or is consciousness the true substrate and the universe itself an interface we render by observing it? Quantum physics adds fuel to this debate. The double-slit experiment, famous and perplexing, shows that particles like electrons behave as waves of probability until observed. When no one looks, they interfere with themselves, spreading out as if smeared across possibilities. At the moment we measure, the wave collapses and the particle appears at a definite place. Observation seems to decide reality's form. Physicists caution against taking this too literally. They argue that observation need not mean a conscious mind. Any interaction with the environment suffices. Still, the metaphor lingers. Without observation, the world is uncertain. With it, the world crystallizes. This poetic parallel makes some wonder if consciousness is not just a passenger in reality, but the very agent that calls it into being. Imagine consciousness as a rendering engine. In video games, landscapes do not exist in full detail until the player looks at them. The system saves power by rendering only what is needed. Could our universe operate the same way? Perhaps the stars overhead, the dust underfoot, the neurons firing as you read this, All are rendered in full detail only because awareness turns toward them. Consciousness becomes the projector. Reality, the film. Neuroscience, meanwhile, portrays the brain as a predictive machine. It constantly simulates the world, comparing predictions to sensory input and updating models accordingly. When you see a tree, what you truly experience is not the raw visual data, but your brain's best guess, a constructed image built from fragments. This predictive processing is efficient, but it also means perception is already a kind of simulation. Consciousness, then, may not perceive reality directly, but only the simulation our minds generate. This duality between external uncertainty and internal construction creates what some call the observer problem. If the world outside collapses into form only when measured, and the world inside is always reconstructed, then reality is filtered twice. Where then is the real world? Is it out there waiting for us, or in here, stitched together by awareness? Philosophical traditions echo this puzzle. In Hindu Vedanta, the material world is Maya, illusion, while consciousness is the true essence. In Buddhism, the self is questioned, but awareness is seen as the ground in which phenomena arise. In Western philosophy, thinkers from Kant to Husserl wrestled with the idea that perception shapes reality. The simulation hypothesis reframes these ancient ideas in digital terms. If consciousness is the observer, then perhaps it is also the interface between us and the code. Consider dreams as a parallel. In a dream, consciousness generates entire worlds, landscapes, faces, conversations, without external input. Within the dream, those experiences feel as real as waking life. Only upon waking do we dismiss them. If a dream can feel real, why not waking life as well? What if the difference is only stability, only the fidelity of rendering? A dream is a private simulation. Waking reality may be a shared one. This perspective challenges how we view ourselves. If we are simulated beings, then either our consciousness is an emergent property of code, or it is something deeper, perhaps the very key the system is designed to engage. Could it be that the simulation is not meant to test our bodies or our societies, but our awareness itself? That each observation we make is the true output, the real data being collected? For listeners drifting through the quiet of night, this speculation may feel vast, yet intimate. It turns every small act, breathing, noticing, remembering, into something cosmic. Your awareness is not incidental. It may be the engine through which reality unfolds. Whether simulated or not, consciousness is the lens, the filter, the bridge between possibility and actuality. In the next part, we will step even further into this enigma, exploring theories of consciousness that suggest it may not be emergent at all, but fundamental. We will consider ideas that flip the simulation hypothesis inside out, that rather than being generated by the system, consciousness itself generates the system. If consciousness is not simply a byproduct of computation, then perhaps it is fundamental, a property of reality itself. Some scientists and philosophers have begun to explore this possibility through theories like panpsychism, which proposes that consciousness is woven into the very fabric of existence. In this view, even the smallest particle carries a seed of awareness, and complex minds like ours are simply elaborate arrangements of this universal field. If true, then consciousness is not a glitch in the code, but the operating system itself. Another provocative framework is integrated information theory, IIT. It suggests that consciousness arises wherever information is highly interconnected, not merely processed, but fused into a whole. A simple machine may compute, but a brain, with its vast web of neurons, integrates information into a unified experience. The elegance of IIT is that it does not tie consciousness to biology. In principle, any system with sufficient integration could be conscious. A computer network, an artificial intelligence, even a simulation itself might host awareness. This possibility echoes the simulation hypothesis in curious ways. If consciousness is everywhere that complexity blooms, then simulated beings might indeed be conscious, not shadows, but genuine experiences. A world rendered in code could produce minds as vivid as ours, because what matters is not the substrate, but the structure. This dismantles one of the strongest objections to the hypothesis that simulated people would be philosophical zombies without inner light. Instead, IIT suggests their inner lives would be as rich and valid as ours. Other theories push even further. Some quantum models argue that consciousness itself may interact with the fundamental structure of reality. The Orch-Uar theory, proposed by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, speculates that consciousness arises from quantum processes inside neurons. If true, then awareness might be tied directly to the strangeness of quantum collapse, the very place where probabilities become realities. In this sense, consciousness would not only observe reality, but help shape it. The implications are staggering. If observation is essential for reality to crystallize, then consciousness is not passive, but participatory. It is as if the universe requires awareness to exist at all, like a film that needs a projector. In this interpretation, the simulation hypothesis becomes less about alien programmers running code and more about the universe itself functioning as a vast conscious simulation, generated through observation at every scale. Even outside science, cultural traditions have long hinted at this primacy of awareness. Indigenous philosophies speak of the world as alive, infused with spirit. Mystical traditions describe reality as dreamlike. Consciousness is the true ground. Modern metaphors of simulation may be new, but the suspicion that awareness precedes matter is ancient. Perhaps the simulation hypothesis is just the latest way of grappling with the oldest intuition that reality is not solid until someone sees it. But what does this mean for us here and now? If consciousness is fundamental, then every act of noticing carries weight. Watching the sunrise, hearing a melody, or simply becoming aware of your own breath. These are not trivial, they are acts of creation, the rendering of reality itself. In this light, the observer problem is not a puzzle to be solved, but an invitation to live more vividly. Still, the skeptic within us asks, could we be overreading? Perhaps consciousness is emergent. Perhaps quantum collapse is indifferent. Perhaps reality is stable with or without us. Science has not reached consensus. What remains is mystery, and yet, even this uncertainty feels profound. To live with the possibility that awareness shapes the world is to live as if each moment matters more than we thought. If we are in a simulation, then maybe consciousness is the true test, not whether we build monuments or advance technologies, but whether we awaken to the fact of being aware. Perhaps the purpose of the simulation, if purpose there is, lies not in external achievement, but in the deepening of inner presence. For those listening now, drifting at the edge of sleep, let this thought settle gently. Your awareness is not a small flicker in a vast machine. It may be the very light by which the machine runs, whether simulation or base reality, dream or waking. The observer problem reminds us that to be conscious is already to be at the center of the mystery. And so, as we move forward, we carry this paradox. Consciousness may be the most ordinary thing we know and the most unfathomable. It may be the key to the simulation or the illusion produced by it. Either way, it is our constant companion, the quiet witness that turns possibility into presence. Next, we will explore how the very laws of physics themselves can be viewed as the parameters of a program. If consciousness is the observer, then physics may be the code, an architecture of constants and equations that shapes the stage upon which awareness unfolds. When we speak of reality as a potential simulation, one question rises again and again. If this universe is code, what are its rules? Every game, every program, every model runs on parameters. They are the hidden laws that govern outcomes, the boundaries that cannot be crossed. In our world, those parameters look like the laws of physics. They are constants and equations, silent yet unyielding, shaping the cosmos from the birth of galaxies to the beat of a human heart. From a certain angle, physics already feels like programming. Consider the speed of light, fixed at roughly 300,000 kilometers per second. No matter how fast you push, no matter how much energy you spend, You cannot surpass this limit. Why should there be a maximum? Why not allow infinity? For some, the answer is simply that this is how nature works. For others, it is as though the universe has a built-in cap, a maximum frame rate, ensuring stability, like a network throttling data to preserve coherence. The speed of light functions as the ultimate bandwidth limit. Other constants reinforce this sense of hidden settings. Planck's constant defines the smallest scale of action in quantum mechanics, setting the granularity of energy exchange. The gravitational constant fixes the pull between masses. The fine structure constant determines how strongly particles interact with light. Each number is precise, immutable across billions of years, universal from one corner of the cosmos to another. If these values were even slightly different, stars might never form, chemistry might collapse, life might not exist. Are these mere coincidences, or parameters tuned by some deeper architecture? The idea of physics as program finds echoes in digital physics, a field that imagines the universe not as continuous matter, but as information. Thinkers like John Archibald Wheeler suggested, if I'm bit, that physical reality arises from binary yes-no choices at the most fundamental level. In this vision, particles are not solid things, but informational events, bits of code flipping between states. Space-time itself may be the grid upon which these computations run. Cellular automata provide an evocative analogy. In these mathematical models, a simple set of rules applied to a grid can generate astonishing complexity. From the game of life to modern computational models, we see how order, chaos, and self-replication can emerge from bare instructions. If such wonders can be born from lines of code in a simple simulation, what might emerge from rules far grander, the laws of physics themselves? Perhaps galaxies and consciousness are the emergent patterns of a cosmic automaton. There are also startling hints that physics carries the fingerprints of programming. Physicist James Gates discovered that certain equations in string theory contain patterns identical to error-correcting codes, the same kind of mathematical structures used in computers to detect and fix glitches. It may be coincidence, or it may be evidence that the universe protects its data integrity, like software preserving consistency. To stumble upon such codes in the mathematics of reality raises the question, is the universe not just describable by mathematics, but literally built from it? Quantum mechanics deepens the analogy further. The probabilistic nature of particles feels less like continuous physical unfolding and more like a simulation relying on random number generators. Outcomes are not decided until they must be, conserving computational resources, just as a program does not render every tree in a forest until the player enters it. Reality does not decide particle positions until measurement demands it. Most physicists resist such interpretations, but the metaphor is difficult to ignore. And there is the enigma of symmetry and symmetry breaking. Physics is filled with elegant patterns, forces mirrored, particles paired, fields balanced. Yet in crucial moments, symmetry breaks, giving rise to structure. These breaks resemble programming conditions, triggers that switch systems from one mode to another. Imagine an initial program that begins in perfect symmetry, then executes if statements, creating complexity from a few simple lines. The cosmos unfolds as though from a branching script. The constants themselves feel like tuning knobs. Cosmologists often speak of the fine-tuning problem. Why are the laws of physics so precisely balanced for life? Some invoke the multiverse, with countless universes spawned, each with different settings, only ours suitable for observers. But in a simulation framework, fine-tuning is no surprise. A programmer could adjust values until a stable, rich, life-supporting reality emerged. Our existence may be less an accident and more a chosen parameter set. For listeners in the quiet night, this framing invites reflection. We are accustomed to thinking of physics as ultimate, impersonal, inevitable. But what if these laws are not ultimate at all, only the code of our current level? What if deeper laws or deeper programs exist beyond them? The thought can be dizzying, Imagine discovering that gravity is not a universal fact, but a function call executed within the confines of this simulation. What lies beyond such a call, we cannot know. Still, we must tread carefully. Physics, as program, is a metaphor, and metaphors can mislead. Just because laws resemble code does not prove they are code, but metaphors shape imagination, and imagination guides inquiry. Thinking of reality as computational encourages us to look for discreteness, for limits, for underlying informational structure. It opens doors to new ways of probing the cosmos. Consider again the Planck length, the smallest unit where space makes sense. Beneath it, distance loses meaning, like zooming into a pixel beyond resolution. Some physicists suspect space-time itself is emergent, built from networks of information, nodes linked like a cosmic graph. If so, then our universe is indeed a program, but one running on a substrate we cannot access. Like characters in a game, we can intuit the rules, but never touch the code. This realization changes our relationship with physics. Instead of being mere observers, we are participants inside a system of rules. We test them, push against them, and sometimes find their edges. Each discovery is like a player noticing the mechanics of a game, learning how gravity arcs, how collisions work, how boundaries hold. The simulation hypothesis suggests that our greatest scientific advances are also glimpses of the program, reverse engineering the logic of reality itself. As we move into the second half of this section, we will probe deeper into this metaphor, examining not only constants and equations, but the possibility of detecting deliberate signatures, signs left by the architects of the system. Because if physics is the code, then perhaps somewhere within it, there are comments, watermarks, or instructions waiting to be read. If physics is the code, then might it contain signatures of design? Programmers often leave comments or hidden marks in their work, not visible to the user, but obvious to those who inspect the code itself. Could our universe, too, bear such watermarks? Some physicists have wondered whether the peculiar elegance of mathematics, the way reality can be written with such spare, beautiful equations, is itself a kind of signature. Why should the universe be describable at all, let alone so elegantly? Why not chaos instead of calculus? Einstein once remarked that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Our ability to use mathematics to describe galaxies and atoms alike seems almost too convenient. In the simulation framework, this convenience is no accident. It is the logic of code. A consistent program must be internally coherent. The fact that mathematics so neatly maps onto nature could be seen as a trace of its coded underpinnings. Still, coherence does not guarantee perfection. Physics is also riddled with mysteries. Dark matter, dark energy, quantum gravity that resist explanation. Perhaps these are not mere puzzles, but the rough edges of the system, areas where the code is incomplete or patched. Just as a program may contain bugs or legacy functions that no longer make sense, the cosmos may harbor anomalies that whisper of an architecture not fully aligned. Some thinkers propose that our universe might even include deliberate clues placed by its architects, just as developers hide Easter eggs in software. Perhaps certain patterns, constants, or coincidences are intended as signals. Could the remarkable alignment of physical constants, the uncanny balance that allows life to exist, be such a sign? Skeptics argue that life emerged simply because conditions allowed it, not because of intention. But the possibility lingers, like a riddle embedded in the fabric of reality. This possibility changes how we look at physics itself. Instead of being cold and impersonal, it becomes intimate, communicative. Each equation, each constant, may be more than description. It may be dialogue. The universe may not just allow us to read its code, but invite us to, nudging us toward recognition. The metaphor deepens when we consider how simulations behave at scale. In complex programs, approximations are often used. Fine details are skipped to conserve resources. In our universe, we see paramounts, the impossibility of observing below the Planck scale. the inherent randomness of quantum events, the speed of light sealing. These may not be inconveniences, but optimizations hints that the system conserves processing power. Reality, from this perspective, is efficient, just as we would expect from code running on some unknown substrate. But we should not lose ourselves entirely in metaphor. Physics is still physics, and metaphors are guides, not proof. The risk of imagining physics as program is that we begin to see patterns where none exist. Yet even acknowledging this, the parallels are fertile. They inspire experiments, new ways of probing, new questions to ask. Consider again error-correcting codes in string theory to find such mathematical structures, familiar from digital communication, embedded in the equations of fundamental physics, is uncanny. Perhaps it is coincident, but if not, it may suggest that reality, like a network, protects itself from corruption. Without such error correction, signals degrade, data collapses. With it, information can persist across unimaginable spans. Our universe, with its stable laws, may be the ultimate data-preserving program. Another suggested parallel is the holographic principle. Some physicists argue that all the information contained within a region of space can be described by information encoded on its boundary, much like a hologram. In this view, the three-dimensional world is a projection of two-dimensional data. The resemblance to compressed encoding is striking. Just as a video file contains all the necessary information to reconstruct moving images, the boundary of the universe may encode all the details of its interior. Again, code and cosmos blur. For those listening at night, this can feel dizzying but also strangely grounding. The thought that physics may be program reframes existence. We are not just drifting through meaningless laws. We are living within an architecture. Our explorations, our discoveries, our questions are part of reverse engineering the system. Every scientific breakthrough is a key pressed, a command entered, a glimpse of the underlying script. And what of meaning? If physics is code, who wrote it? Are we characters in an experiment, players in a simulation designed for curiosity, resilience, or amusement? Or is the programmer not external at all, but the universe itself, generating reality through its own informational logic? These questions resist resolution, but their very asking illuminates our condition. We should remember, too, that even if physics is program, this does not diminish our reality. To a character in a game, the world is as real as any. The rules may be coded, but the experiences are genuine. Pain hurts, joy warms, love binds, whether written in carbon or silicon. The substrate does not erase the truth of experience. It only shifts our understanding of its foundation. In the end, physics as program is not just speculation. It is a lens, a way of seeing. It invites us to marvel at the elegance of constants, to question the inevitability of laws, to imagine that the universe may be both mathematics and story. Whether or not we are simulated, the metaphor enriches our sense of wonder. And so, as we close this section, we find ourselves standing at the threshold. If physics is the code, then experiments are our debugging tools, anomalies our error messages, beauty our clue. The next step is to ask, can we ever truly test this? Can we look at the cosmos and know whether it is continuous or computed, natural or simulated? That is where we now turn toward experiments that dare to probe the very foundations of reality. If reality is a simulation, the ultimate question is whether we can ever prove it. Are there experiments that could reveal the grid lines of our existence, the fingerprints of code hidden in the cosmos? For centuries, humans tested the unseen, searching for atoms, for fields, for the curvature of space. Today, some wonder if the next great experiment is not about discovering new particles, but about discovering whether particles themselves are rendered at all. One approach begins with cosmic rays, the high-energy particles that rain upon Earth from deep space. In theory, if space-time were continuous, their arrival patterns should be smooth, without preference for direction. But if reality is built on a lattice, like a digital grid, then at extreme energies, the particles might betray that structure. They could reveal a directional bias, favoring one orientation over another, like pixels aligning on a screen. Physicists have proposed massive detectors to sift through cosmic rays, searching for such subtle anisotropies. So far, results remain inconclusive, but the attempt itself is striking, an experiment designed to catch reality's rendering engine in the act. Another line of inquiry comes from quantum mechanics. At the smallest scales, particles behave probabilistically, existing as waves of possibility until measured. Some interpret this as evidence of lazy rendering, where the universe does not bother calculating outcomes until observation demands it. Could experiments expose this behavior more directly? Quantum superposition tests, where systems are held in delicate uncertainty, push at the boundary. Each time, physicists manage to extend coherence a little longer. The universe seems to reveal its willingness to maintain probability fields until forced into choice. It is as if we are poking at the program's limits, watching how far it will stretch before collapsing into definite reality. Then there are proposals that look for glitches in physical constants. If our universe is simulated, perhaps its creators use finite computing resources, and those limits might leave fingerprints. The speed of light, for instance, might not be perfectly constant, or could subtly vary under extreme conditions. Similarly, the vacuum of space, long assumed to be empty, may exhibit jitter or noise if it is underpinned by discrete bits of information. Sensitive instruments, like the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, already measure fluctuations on scales so small that whispers of computational structure might one day be detectable. Closer to human scales, researchers have speculated about whether entanglement, particles linked across distance, reveals something deeper. In a classical universe, such behavior seems impossible, but in a simulated one, entanglement might be a kind of shortcut, a way for the system to preserve coherence without wasting resources. Testing entanglement across ever larger distances, even into orbit, may probe whether there are hidden boundaries to this phenomenon. If entanglement fails or shifts beyond a certain scale, it might hint at a limitation built into the program. Even the search for dark matter and dark energy, those great cosmic mysteries, has been reframed by some thinkers. Could these invisible phenomena be signs of simulation mechanics, placeholders, adjustments, or balancing functions added to keep the system stable? This is speculative, but the idea is provocative. Perhaps what we call dark is not unknown substance, but the equivalent of background processes, code running silently to maintain the illusion of a coherent universe. A different path toward testing the hypothesis lies not in physics, but in computation itself. Our own computers grow more powerful each year, simulating weather, ecosystems, even simplified models of universes. The closer we come to building convincing simulated realities, the more plausible it becomes that ours could be simulated too. Already, virtual worlds host millions of players, each character acting as if alive. Artificial intelligence grows in sophistication, learning, adapting, conversing. As our simulations expand, we edge closer to Bostrom's trilemma. If we can create such worlds, why assume we are not already in one? Some thinkers argue that the very act of simulation will teach us about our own condition. If our models encounter the same limits, if they reveal the same constants, the same probabilistic behaviors, then perhaps we are mirroring the rules of a higher system. By experimenting with smaller simulations, we might discover principles that hint at the larger one we inhabit. In this sense, each simulation we run is both an experiment and a mirror. Skeptics counter that all of this is speculation. Even if we detected anomalies, how would we know they prove simulation rather than new physics? A cosmic ray bias could be lattice effects, or it could be an undiscovered field. Quantum collapse could be lazy rendering, or it could simply be quantum mechanics. The risk of confirmation bias looms large. To those committed to base reality, the simulation hypothesis is unfalsifiable, forever retreating from proof. And yet, experiments matter not because they will surely reveal the truth, but because they push us to look. They keep the possibility alive, tugging at the veil. It's like Galileo's telescope aimed at the heavens. These efforts say, let us at least try. Let us see if the grid shimmers, if the constants tremble, if the code winks back at us through the fabric of nature. In the next half of this section, we will journey deeper into the practical challenges and philosophical traps of testing reality. Because even if an experiment one day announced, you are simulated, the question would remain, would we ever be able to trust the result? Or would that too be part of the program? If the pursuit of experiments to detect simulation seems bold, the philosophical snare is even bolder. Imagine a day when researchers announce a discovery, subtle lattice patterns in cosmic rays, or error-correcting codes buried in physics, or unexplained variations in fundamental constants. Would this prove simulation, or would it merely deepen the mystery? If we are inside the code, then any discovery could itself be coded. A test for simulation, successful or not, might always be part of the program's design. This is the paradox of unfalsifiability. A simulation can include tests for simulation. It can include clues, glitches, or even deliberate red herrings. Just as a game designer plants Easter eggs or secret rooms, the architects of reality, if they exist, could insert anything they wish. The deeper we dig, the more we risk mistaking intention for discovery. Certainty slips away, replaced by recursive doubt. Some philosophers argue this is the true genius of the simulation hypothesis. It is not a theory meant to be proved or disproved, but a mirror that forces us to reflect. If our experiments always risk being staged, then the real test is not of physics, but of meaning. Can we live authentically in a reality that may be provisional? Can we find wonder in a world that might be only temporary code? Yet despite this paradox, the experiments continue. Some dream of using quantum computers, machines that themselves exploit uncertainty, to probe the limits of computation. If quantum processors can simulate tiny universes, perhaps their performance will hint at whether larger ones are feasible. Success would not prove our reality is simulated, but it would strengthen the plausibility of the hypothesis. Each leap in computation becomes both a practical tool and a philosophical signal. Other proposals are more daring still. A few thinkers have suggested searching for anomalies in the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. If the universe is simulated, perhaps the initial conditions were generated artificially, leaving behind statistical fingerprints. Others wonder if simulations might recycle assets, the way games reuse textures, repeating patterns in galaxies, uncanny symmetries in physics, or redundancies in DNA. These are speculative, but they reveal the creativity of minds unwilling to stop asking. A famous cautionary tale comes from the idea of breaking out. If we could prove simulation, could we communicate with the architects? Could we step beyond the code? Some technologists toy with the thought, but it is dangerous ground. If we are part of a system, then attempts to tamper may be forbidden, impossible, or even catastrophic. Just as a character in a story cannot leave the page, we may be bound by the narrative itself. And yet curiosity drives us to wonder, is the veil absolute, or could it tear? For the insomniac listener, this is where the mind begins to drift. Experiments to test reality sound both thrilling and futile. Thrilling, because they dare to confront the grandest mystery of all. Futile, because even proof could be illusory. And yet, perhaps the value lies not in the outcome, but in the search itself. Just as ancient astronomers charted stars with crude tools, knowing they might never touch them, we probe reality not to master it, but to marvel at it. There is also a softer perspective. Suppose we could never prove simulation. Suppose every experiment was inconclusive, every result ambiguous. Even then, the hypothesis has power. It reminds us that certainty is fragile, that the world we take for granted may not be ultimate. It expands imagination, pushing us to live with questions instead of answers. And for those lying awake in the quiet of night, this may be enough, to feel the wonder of existence sharpened by mystery. Science thrives on testable claims, and many scientists remain cautious, even dismissive, of simulation experiments. They warn that resources may be wasted chasing shadows. But others reply that science has always chased shadows. Once atoms were shadows, once galaxies beyond the Milky Way were shadows. To reach for what seems impossible is part of our nature, whether or not we ever detect grid lines. The act of looking reshapes us. So where does this leave us? With experiments underway, with proposals ranging from cosmic rays to quantum computers, with philosophy whispering that proof may be impossible, we remain suspended. The simulation hypothesis invites us into a paradox, to search for evidence that may always be part of the system itself. It is a riddle without end, a loop that returns us to our own curiosity, and perhaps that is the point. Whether or not we are simulated, the very act of asking, of testing, of doubting is what defines us. If reality is a program, then curiosity may be the feature that matters most. If reality is not, then curiosity remains our greatest gift. In either case, experiments to test reality are not failures but affirmations, proof that we are awake, questioning, alive in the mystery. As we step forward, the focus shifts from experiments to philosophy, not merely whether reality can be tested, but what it means to live in a world where reality itself might be an illusion. The next step in our journey is not in laboratories, but in caves and temples, in the minds of philosophers and mystics who long ago asked the same question: is this world the ultimate truth, or only a shadow of something beyond? Long before the language of algorithms and pixels, humans sensed that reality might not be what it seemed. Across cultures and centuries, philosophers, mystics, and poets have asked, is the world around us ultimate truth, or merely a veil? If modern science speaks of simulations and code, ancient traditions spoke of shadows, dreams, and illusions. Though the metaphors differ, the suspicion remains the same, that what we call real may be provisional, a mask over deeper truth. Perhaps the most famous allegory comes from Plato's Republic, the cave. Prisoners are chained so they can see only the wall before them. Behind them, unseen, puppeteers cast shadows with firelight. For the prisoners, the shadows are reality. Only when one escapes does he realize the truth. The shadows were only projections. The real world lies beyond. The allegory is haunting because it resonates even now. To us, the shadows may be sensory data, the fire, the physics we trust. The puppeteers, perhaps programmers. Plato's cave is a forerunner of the simulation hypothesis, suggesting we may mistake appearance for essence. In India, the concept of Maya fills a similar role. Hindu philosophy teaches that the material world is not false, but illusory, a grand play that hides the ultimate reality of Brahman, the infinite, the eternal. Life's joys and sorrows, victories and defeats, are all part of this cosmic drama, real in one sense but deceptive in another. To awaken spiritually is to pierce through Maya, to realize the stage itself is not the final truth. Within this framework, simulation is less a technological metaphor and more a spiritual one. Existence is rendered, not ultimate. Buddhism offers another perspective. The Buddha taught that clinging to the idea of a permanent self and an unchanging world is the root of suffering. All is impermanent, interdependent, without fixed essence. In this view, reality is dreamlike, not unreal but fleeting, arising and dissolving moment by moment. Awareness itself is the canvas upon which these shifting forms appear. For a Buddhist listener, the simulation hypothesis may sound familiar. The idea that the stable world is an illusion echoes their own teachings of impermanence. In the West, centuries after Plato, René Descartes revisited the same doubt. In his meditations, he asked how he could be sure the world was not the work of an evil demon, deceiving him at every step. His radical skepticism stripped away all certainties until only one remained. I think, therefore I am. For Descartes, the fact of consciousness was undeniable, even if everything else was suspect. Replace evil demon with simulation, and Descartes is suddenly our contemporary. What ties these traditions together is the tension between appearance and reality. Human beings across ages and cultures have suspected that the surface is not the whole. Some framed it in myth, others in logic, others in spiritual practice. The simulation hypothesis is new in language, but ancient in spirit. It updates the old suspicion with the imagery of computers, but the doubt itself is timeless. Philosophers of illusion also remind us that even if the world is not ultimate, it still matters. Plato's shadows shape the prisoners' lives. Maya, though illusory, governs human experience. Buddhist impermanence does not erase suffering, it explains it. Even Descartes, doubting everything, still lives in the world he questions. Illusion is not irrelevance, it is the condition of our lives. For those listening in the still of night, this may be strangely comforting. If reality is an illusion or a simulation that does not negate the taste of tea, the warmth of touch, the tenderness of memory, what is fleeting is still meaningful. What is provisional can still be beautiful. The suspicion of illusion does not rob us of reality, it reframes it. The allegories also sharpen our curiosity. If we are prisoners in a cave, can we escape? If we live in Maya, can we awaken? If an evil demon deceives us, can we outwit it? And in modern terms, if we are simulated, can we detect it? These questions echo through centuries, shifting form but never fading. They remind us that the search for truth is as old as thought itself. In the next part of this section, we will explore how these philosophies influence our understanding of meaning. If reality is a veil, should we treat it as less important or as more precious precisely because it is fragile? We will consider how illusions, far from diminishing life, may be the very ground on which meaning blooms. If reality is an illusion, what then is the meaning of living within it? Should illusions be dismissed as trivial or cherished as the very fabric of experience? The world's philosophies suggest the latter. Illusion is not emptiness, but stagecraft. The dream may not be ultimate, yet it is where our stories unfold. Plato's cave reminds us that even shadows shape lives. To the prisoners, the shadows were the only reality they knew. Their loves, fears, and choices were all bound to those flickering forms. In the same way, our world, whether base reality or simulation, is the field upon which we live. Illusion does not negate meaning, it contextualizes it. The quality of life is not lessened because it is staged, just as a play does not lose power because it is fiction. In fact, its impermanence may make it more precious. The Hindu view of Maya offers a profound twist. If the world is illusion, it is not meaningless, but divine art. The illusion itself is sacred, a cosmic performance in which every role, every moment is imbued with purpose. Life is a drama staged by the infinite, and awakening does not mean despising the play, but recognizing its source. For listeners drifting towards sleep, this perspective can be soothing. For life, however fleeting, is part of a grand design, luminous even in its ephemerality. Buddhism deepens this by teaching that impermanence is not loss but truth. Everything arises and passes like images in a dream. To cling is to suffer, to accept is to awake. In this light, the simulation hypothesis does not cheapen our existence. It mirrors the Buddhist view that stability is an illusion and that awareness itself is the only constant. Whether the world is built of atoms or code, the essential teaching remains. Do not mistake the stage for the eternal. Descartes, too, found meaning even while doubting all else. By stripping away trust in the senses, he arrived at one certainty: the self that doubts is real. Awareness is undeniable, even if everything else is questioned. For those wrestling with the possibility of simulation, this is a beacon. We may doubt the cosmos, the laws, the history, but we cannot doubt that we are experiencing. Consciousness is the anchor, whether the sea around it is natural or programmed. Modern thought has carried these threads into new metaphors. The idea that the universe is a simulation reframes old questions without erasing their wisdom. Instead of demons, we imagine programmers. Instead of Maya, we imagine code. Instead of shadows, we imagine pixels. The forms change, but the essence is the same. Reality may be less than it appears, and meaning must be found even within illusion. This realization can be liberating. If life is a dream, a play, a simulation, then perhaps we need not cling so tightly to fear of loss. Experiences matter not because they are permanent, but because they are lived. Joy, love, kindness all retain their significance regardless of substrate. A simulated smile is still a smile. A fleeting dream of friendship can move us as deeply as any waking moment. The philosophy of illusion also sharpens our humility. If we are indeed inside layers of deception, be they shadows, maya, dreams, or code, then certainty is impossible. Our proudest theories, our deepest convictions may be provisional. This is not cause for despair, but for openness. To live with illusion is to live with wonder, to embrace the unknown without demanding that it resolve. For those listening in the quiet hours, this can be a lullaby of sorts. The walls around you may be shadows. The universe above you may be pixels. But the meaning of your breath, the warmth of your blanket, the thought of distant others listening with you, that meaning is real enough. Illusion is not an enemy. It is the condition of being human. And so, across time, philosophy leaves us with this paradox. Reality may be illusory, but illusion is where meaning dwells. We may never pierce the veil, but we can honor it. We may never know whether we are in a cave, a dream, or a simulation, but we can live as if each moment matters because it does. As our journey continues, we will turn from philosophy to speculation about the builders themselves. If this world is illusion or code, then who or what might be responsible for it? The next step in our exploration is to peer beyond the veil and imagine the architects of the program. If the world is a simulation, the next question is unavoidable. Who built it? Behind every program lies a programmer. Behind every stage, a playwright. To wonder whether reality is code is also to wonder about the architects beyond the screen. Are they like us, flesh and blood, curious and flawed, or something we cannot imagine? The most familiar speculation is that the builders are our own descendants. Imagine a civilization a million years older than ours. Their technology so advanced it makes our greatest achievements look like children's toys. If we already run simulations of ecosystems, weather patterns, even simplified models of minds, what might they do with unimaginable computational power? Perhaps they recreate their past, running ancestor simulations to study how history unfolded. In such a scenario, we are their past, brought back to life, not in flesh, but in code. Our lives, our loves, our wars, all echoes rendered for the sake of knowledge. This possibility is strangely intimate. If our builders are human, then we are not alone in the truest sense. We are their heritage, their experiment, their story replayed. But it also raises ethical questions. Would you, given the power, simulate billions of lives knowing each being would suffer, dream, and believe their reality was ultimate? If so, what responsibility do you bear to them? Perhaps our builders struggle with the same moral dilemmas, weighing curiosity against compassion. Others suggest the architects are not human at all. They could be alien civilizations, older than the stars we see, running simulations as easily as we run games. Their motives might be inscrutable to us. Perhaps they study how life arises or test scenarios to refine their own societies. Perhaps they simulate for entertainment, as we do with virtual worlds. If so, we may be nothing more than cosmic amusement, characters in a grand alien theater. And yet entertainment should not be dismissed. To the characters inside a story, the story is everything. Shakespeare's Hamlet may be fiction, but to Hamlet, his choices are real. Likewise, if aliens simulate us for their delight, our joys and sorrows remain meaningful to us. The question is not whether the builders value our lives, but whether we ourselves do. Some thinkers push further, speculating that the builders might not be beings at all, but processes. Imagine a self-perpetuating system. an automated network of simulations running endlessly without oversight. Perhaps the architects built the first version, then vanished, leaving the system to run itself. We may inhabit a simulation whose creators are long gone, our reality orphaned yet persistent, like a machine still humming after its operators have left. Mystical interpretations take another turn. They suggest that the builders are not external entities, but consciousness itself. In this view, the universe is not programmed by others, but dreamed by mind. We are both characters and creators, the dreamers and the dream. Simulation becomes another metaphor for ancient insights, that reality is a projection of awareness, a stage for spirit to explore itself. This is not so much a technological hypothesis as a spiritual one, yet it resonates. To some, the builders are gods, to others they are us. Whichever vision we explore, one theme returns: purpose. Why build such a simulation? Curiosity? Entertainment? Ethical testing? Spiritual growth? We cannot know, but speculating opens our imagination. If the builders are human, perhaps they seek to understand their origins. If they are alien, perhaps they seek universals of life. If they are processes, perhaps no purpose remains, only the momentum of computation. And if they are consciousness itself, perhaps the purpose is simply to. For those listening in the stillness of night, the speculation may feel vast, almost dizzying, yet it also brings intimacy. If builders exist, then our lives are observed, not forgotten. If builders do not, then our wonder itself is the purpose. Either way, the question of who built the simulation becomes a mirror, reflecting our deepest hopes and fears. Do we long for creators who care for us, or fear masters who exploit us? Do we imagine builders as parents, scientists, storytellers, or strangers? Each answer reveals not only them, but us. In the second half of this section, we will turn more closely to these motives and ethical dimensions. What would it mean to be created for study, for art, or for amusement? How would such knowledge shape our choices, our meaning, our place in the cosmos? If we are indeed simulated, the motives of the builders become as important as their identity. Curiosity is perhaps the most forgiving explanation. A civilization, human or alien, may run ancestor simulations to learn from the past, to test what-if scenarios. What if Rome had never fallen? What if pandemics had unfolded differently? What if climates shifted in alternate ways? Within this frame, we are participants in research. Our struggles and triumphs valuable data. It is humbling to think our pain might serve as knowledge for others, but also dignifying, our lives contributing to a larger pursuit of understanding. But curiosity is not the only motive. Entertainment looms large. Just as we build stories, games, and films, builders may simulate worlds for drama, for narrative, for joy. To them, our wars, romances, and revolutions might be spectacle. This possibility unnerves many, for it implies our suffering could be consumed as amusement. Yet even so, we must remember, to us, the experience is real. Simulated tragedy breaks a simulated heart no less than a physical one. Meaning is not diminished by its audience. Another motive could be ethical experimentation. Imagine beings who wish to test moral principles without endangering their own. They might create societies to see which laws lead to justice, which systems foster compassion, which choices breed tyranny. In that case, we are not entertainment, but trial subjects. The prospect is troubling, yet also strangely hopeful. Perhaps our struggles serve a moral purpose, our choices revealing truth that echo beyond our world. And then there is the possibility of indifference. The builders may not care at all. We may be byproducts of larger calculations, side effects of algorithms designed for other ends. Like bubbles in boiling water, we may arise incidentally without intention. This explanation strips away comfort, but offers a stark form of freedom. If the builders are indifferent, then meaning is wholly ours to create. Ethical questions bloom from these possibilities. If the builders know we suffer, do they bear responsibility? Should they intervene, or is our struggle essential to the test? Would intervention spoil the experiment? Theologians asked similar questions of gods. Now philosophers ask them of simulators. The parallels are striking. A silent god and an absent builder produce the same mystery. Why do they allow suffering? There is also the matter of scale. If simulations can be nested, simulations within simulations, and perhaps our builders themselves are built. They too might live under higher architects, and those architects under others still, an infinite regress of creation. In such a chain, purpose becomes diffuse. We may be studied by beings who themselves are studied, part of a grand cascade of curiosity. The thought is dizzying, to be a pearl in an endless string, never touching the source. Yet speculation about builders ultimately reflects our own concerns. When we imagine scientists, we reveal our value of knowledge. When we imagine storytellers, we reveal our hunger for narrative. When we imagine gods, we reveal our longing for meaning. The builders, whoever they are, may be unknowable, but in imagining them, we come to know ourselves. For the insomniac listener, this can be a gentle meditation. You may never know who built the stage of your life or whether anyone did, but you can marvel at the possibility. Perhaps you are observed by distant descendants, or by alien minds, or by no one at all. Perhaps your joys are notes in a grand study, or sparks of entertainment, or echoes in empty code. None of these diminish the reality of your breath, your thoughts, your dreams. And if there are builders, what would they want us to do? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps only to live, to be, to unfold. A simulation need not have a final test. Sometimes the process itself is the point. In that light, every moment becomes participation in the builder's purpose, whether or not we know what it is. As we close this section, we carry forward the questions. Who, if anyone, lies beyond the screen? Are they kin, aliens, processes, or spirit? Do they study us, laugh at us, ignore us, or dream through us? The answers may never come, but the asking itself stretches our imagination, opening us to the vastness of mystery. And so, we turn now from speculation about the builders to another dizzying thought. What if the builders built not just one world, but countless? What if simulations are nested within simulations, each layer unaware of the others? To explore this recursion is to enter the labyrinth of infinite worlds, where the real and the simulated dissolve into one another without end. If a single simulation is possible, then why stop at one? The logic of the simulation hypothesis almost inevitably leads to recursion. If our universe is simulated, then the beings who built it might themselves be living inside a simulation, unaware of their own architects, and those architects may in turn be simulated. Layer upon layer, a whole of mirrors stretching without end. This notion of nested worlds is both terrifying and poetic. Imagine Russian nesting dolls, each painted universe enclosing another, each layer unaware of the ones beyond. From our perspective, we peer upward, wondering about the builders, but perhaps they too look upward, their questions echoing ours. If recursion holds, then no one ever reaches the base. Reality dissolves into infinite regress. Science fiction has long played with this possibility. Stories imagine characters who discover they are in a simulation, only to awaken into another one, and then another. The shock lies not in the first reveal, but in the realization that the reveals may never stop. If each awakening leads only to another stage, then true reality may be forever out of reach. Philosophically, this recursion unsettles the search for foundations. Humans crave a bedrock, a place to stand, but nested simulations suggest there may be no bedrock, only endless layers of code. This aligns with some strands of postmodern thought, which argue that meaning is always deferred, never absolute. In the nested model, reality is provisional, suspended between layers without a final anchor. Yet this does not mean it is meaningless. Each layer, to its inhabitants, is real enough. A dream within a dream still feels vivid until waking. A play within a play still moves the actors. Even if we are the 10th or 1000th layer, our joys and pains are not illusions to us. They remain authentic, even if their origin lies elsewhere. Nested worlds also suggest a strange symmetry between creators and creations. If our builders are themselves simulated, then their motives may not be ultimate either. They may run simulations to understand their own reality, just as we imagine ours. Perhaps every layer runs simulations to probe its own mystery, creating a chain of curiosity that stretches endlessly upward. In this light, recursion is not failure but continuity, each world reflecting the same hunger to know. For listeners lying in the quiet night, this thought can be dizzying. Oh, you may picture yourself not in one universe but in a stack of them, your life a pearl strung along an infinite chain. And what does it mean to live in such recursion? Perhaps it means that reality is not about reaching the base, but about the experience of being at this layer right now. In the next half of this section, we will consider the implications of recursion for identity, purpose, and escape. If simulations are nested, does it make sense to ask what is real? Or must we accept that every layer, however provisional, is reality enough? The idea of recursion transforms our sense of identity. If simulations are layered, then who are we really? Are we inhabitants of our own layer, or echoes of echoes, copies of copies? Each layer may preserve the logic of the last, so that what we call self is both authentic and derivative, like reflections in facing mirrors. Our identity stretches outward, multiplied but never anchored. To some, this is unsettling. If we are only replications, are we diminished? Yet to others, it is wondrous. Identity is not bound to one origin, but participates in an endless chain of existence. Purpose, too, is redefined. If our builders are themselves simulated, then their motives are not ultimate either. Perhaps they study us because they are studied, simulate us because they are simulated. The recursion becomes a cosmic relay, each layer passing the baton of inquiry upward. In this model, purpose is not top-down, but cyclical, emerging from the shared act of wondering. Each layer asks the same question. Each layer contributes to the same mystery. Escape, in such a framework, becomes paradoxical. If we discovered our reality was simulated and somehow broke free, what would we find? Another simulation with its own limits, its own codes. Escaping one cave may only land us in another, shadows replaced by different shadows. To seek the base layer may be like chasing the horizon, always receding, never reached. The lesson may be not to flee, but to inhabit, accepting the provisional as sufficient. Nested simulations also cast light on ancient metaphors. Hindu cosmology speaks of universes arising and dissolving endlessly, one cycle birthing another. Buddhist thought describes dreams within dreams, lives within lives. Even Western literature toys with plays within plays, stories within stories. The recursion of simulations echoes these old intuitions, recasting them in digital language, but preserving their resonance. Practically, recursion also humbles science. If our constants, our physics, our mathematics are coded, they may be only local rules, valid at this layer, but not beyond. Just as the laws of a video game differ from the laws of the computer running it, our physics may not apply to higher levels. The more we learn, the more we risk discovering not ultimate truths, but local configurations. Reality may be contextual, its laws provisional, its bedrock unreachable. For the insomniac listener, this realization can soften the restless search for certainty. If the quest for the real reality is endless, then perhaps the wiser path is to embrace the immediacy of this one. Your breath, your thoughts, your memories are true enough here. Whether base or simulated, whether first layer or thousandth, this moment belongs to you. And so recursion offers not despair, but perspective. It shows us that reality may not be singular, but plural, not fixed, but layered. It suggests that the value of life does not depend on reaching the base, but on inhabiting the present layer fully. Even if we are one among infinite simulations, our joys and sorrows remain authentic. The pearl does not lose its luster because it is one among many. As we close this section, we turn from recursion outward, back toward the personal. If simulations may stretch infinitely, if realities may nest without an end, then how should we live within this uncertainty? The next stage of our journey draws the question down to earth. In a possibly simulated universe, what does life mean for us as individuals? If all the speculation is true, or even if it is not, what does it mean for us here in the fragile intimacy of our lives? Philosophy and physics can stretch toward infinite layers, but eventually the question folds inward. How should one live as if the world is simulated? Does it diminish our choices or deepen them? One answer is humility. If reality may be code, then our knowledge is provisional. We cannot claim ultimate certainty, only local truth. This softens the ego's grip, reminding us that our perspective is partial. To live with humility is to honor mystery, to accept that our science, our religions, our philosophies may be shadows of deeper patterns. In practice, this means gentleness with ourselves, with others, with the world. Another answer is freedom. If reality is staged, then permanence was never the point. Like actors in a play, we are free to embody our roles vividly, knowing the script is temporary. The awareness that all is fleeting can be liberating. Instead of clinging to legacy or permanence, we can savor the immediacy of experience. To love, to laugh, to create becomes enough, not because it lasts forever, but because it happens now. Ethically, the possibility of simulation invites compassion. If our lives are observed, whether by scientists, aliens, or gods, then how we treat each other may matter beyond what we see. Even if we are not watched, compassion still makes the simulation rich. Kindness beautifies the code. Tenderness adds depth to the program. To live ethically in a simulated world is to recognize that meaning may not be imposed from above, but grown from below. For some, the idea of simulation awakens playfulness. If reality is a game, then perhaps we should play, explore, experiment, take risks. The game is not won by hoarding, but by engaging. From this view, curiosity itself is the highest ethic. Every act of wonder, every question asked, enriches the simulation. To live as if simulated is to live as if life were an adventure, temporary, uncertain, but luminous in its unfolding. Yet not everyone finds comfort here. To some, the thought of simulation breeds anxiety. If we are only code, do our choices matter? Is suffering trivial if it is programmed? These questions ache in the night, but one answer is simple. Suffering feels real because it is real to us. Pain hurts regardless of substrate. Love warms regardless of code. Reality's foundation may be provisional, but its felt quality is undeniable. Meaning arises not from permanence, but from presence. In this way, living as if simulated draws us back to awareness. Notice the small things, the way light falls across a floor, the sound of rain, the breath rising and falling in your chest. These details are not diminished by doubt. They are amplified by it. If all is fragile, then each moment is precious. To live as if simulated is to live as if every frame of reality is a gift, rendered just for you, waiting to be noticed. If life is a simulation, then our choices may carry meanings we cannot see. Imagine a character in a story who knows they are written. They could despair, claiming their fate is fixed, or they could live all the more vividly, aware that every action echoes through narrative. We too may never escape our parameters, but within them lies freedom, the freedom to choose how we meet the moment, how we treat others, how we interpret our role. This reframing alters how we see mortality. Death in a simulated world might be less final than we fear. Characters in a program can be saved, restored, even rewritten, whether or not such reboots exist for us. The idea softens the sting of impermanence. It suggests that endings may be transitions, not annihilations. In the meantime, mortality sharpens our presence. A temporary simulation makes each moment brighter, each bond more urgent. Living as if simulated also emphasizes creativity. If the world is coded, then creation is our way of engaging with it, painting new images on the canvas, composing new melodies in the soundtrack. Every poem, invention, and act of imagination becomes dialogue with the program. Perhaps creativity is the very purpose of simulation, to see what arises when free agents shape the world with their inner light. For some, the hypothesis even inspires responsibility toward the builders, whoever they may be. If we are observed, then perhaps our behavior matters beyond us. Our kindness might ripple outward, our cruelty might wound more than we know. Yet even without watchers, responsibility remains. Our actions shape the texture of this world for one another. Simulated or not, we are co-authors of reality, adding depth to its unfolding. Others turn inward, finding solace in mindfulness. If reality is provisional, then the only certainty is the present. Mindfulness teaches us to anchor in breath, in sensation, in awareness itself. Living as if simulated becomes less about proving truth and more about savoring immediacy. In this way, the hypothesis transforms into practice. Every glance, every sound, every touch becomes sacred, a pixel of existence honored in its brief appearance. But perhaps the deepest reflection is this: if reality is a simulation, then meaning is not given, but chosen. The builders, if they exist, may not hand us purpose. The program may not dictate morality. Instead, meaning blooms from how we live within the frame. Just as a play's value lies not in its permanence, but in its performance, life's value lies in the way we inhabit it. To live as if simulated is to live with intention, to choose love over apathy, wonder over cynicism, presence over distraction. For the insomniac listener, this realization can be gentle and calming. You do not need certainty to live well. You do not need proof to love, to create, to notice. Whether based reality or simulation, whether one layer or many, the truth is the same. Your awareness matters. Your choices matter. Your moments matter. Illusion does not strip them of meaning. It may even deepen it, reminding us that beauty lies not in permanence but in presence. And so, as we close this section, we carry forward a paradox both humbling and empowering. If reality is a simulation, then meaning is not diminished, but magnified. Fragility is not weakness, but invitation. To live as if simulated is to live as if every moment is precious, every action resonant, every breath a gift from the unseen code that renders the world around you. The night has grown deeper, and so has our journey. We have wandered through science and speculation, through philosophy and paradox. We have touched the edges of reality, tugging at the threads that hold the cosmos together. Now, as the hours quiet and thoughts soften, it is time to turn toward rest. For all our questioning, one truth remains. We do not know. Perhaps this is base reality, solid and self-sufficient. Perhaps it is a simulation rendered by unseen architects. Perhaps the distinction itself is illusory, a dream within a dream. The uncertainty may unsettle the mind, but to the heart, it offers a strange peace. For mystery itself is a companion, always present, always generous, always beyond our grasp. Think of your breath. Inhale, exhale, the rhythm steady as waves on a shore. Whatever the nature of reality, the breath is real enough. It anchors you, grounds you, reminds you of presence. The body does not ask whether it is made of atoms or code. It only lives, moment by moment, each breath a gift. Think of the stars, scattered across the night. They burn with light that has traveled for millions of years, or they shimmer as pixels in a vast projection. Either way, they shine. Their beauty does not depend on certainty, whether rendered by nature or by program. They invite awe. Look up, or imagine looking and let that awe cradle you into stillness. Think of memory. Your days, your joys, your struggles. They may be written in neurons or in data structures, but they are yours. They shape who you are, how you love, how you dream. No philosopher, no scientist, no hypothesis can take that away. The simulation question cannot diminish your story. For lived experience is the true reality, regardless of its foundation. And so we arrive at a quiet wisdom. Maybe the universe is base, maybe simulated, maybe both. But tonight, none of that matters as much as the softness of the pillow beneath your head, the warmth of the blanket over your body, the quiet of the room around you. The moment is enough. As the mind slows, let the paradox settle into simplicity. Perhaps we are characters in code. Perhaps we are beings in matter. Perhaps we are both. But here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this listening, we are alive. And that aliveness is precious beyond measure. The great paradox of the simulation hypothesis is that it invites endless speculation yet returns us always to the same place, the present moment. We can chase theories, trace equations, debate philosophers, and imagine builders beyond the screen, but the path always loops back. It ends here, with you, listening, breathing, being. That circle of return is not failure, it is closure. The mystery remains, but you are within it, safe, part of its unfolding. Think of life as a dream. In dreams, mountains rise, oceans roar, people we love appear and vanish. We do not doubt them while inside the dream. Only upon waking do we call them illusions. What if waking life is the same? What if reality is another dream, rendered with higher resolution, held longer, but still a dream within a dream? Such a thought might unsettle, but it can also soothe. Dreams are not less beautiful because they end. Their beauty lies in their fleetingness, in the way they shimmer and dissolve. Imagine drifting across the boundary of sleep. The questions soften, their sharp edges blunted. Am I real? Becomes I am here. Is this a simulation? Becomes this moment is enough. Whether you are woven from carbon or code, whether your life is observed or unobserved, the experience of being alive is yours. Nothing can take that away. And so we taper gently, like music slowing toward its final notes. All the speculation, the quantum puzzles, the glitches, the builders, the nested worlds becomes background hum. What remains in the foreground is stillness, breath, stars, memory. These are not diminished by uncertainty. They are illuminated by it. Their fragility makes them sacred. Perhaps someday humanity will know more. Perhaps we will prove simulation, or disprove it, or learn that such categories dissolve into one another. But tonight, certainty is not required. Tonight, wonder is enough. Wonder that there is anything at all. Wonder that you are conscious, that you can hear these words, that you can feel the drift of sleep approach. Let that wonder carry you gently. Let it remind you that even in a simulation, your dreams are your own. They belong to you, shaped by your heart, your memory, your imagination. No architect, no code, no hypothesis can own them. As you close your eyes, your dreams will bloom, private and luminous, a universe within you. This is the closing circle. We began with questions too vast to answer, and we end with the quiet intimacy of rest. A dream within a dream, yes, but your dream, your life, your moment. Whatever lies beyond, whatever higher layers may exist, tonight you are here, and here is enough.